Elon Musk reveals why he decided to leave America. Sometimes, the only way to truly see the future is to step away from the noise of the present. I want people to understand that my decisions are never about comfort, they are about vision. Leaving America was not about abandoning a place I loved, it was about listening to something greater, a voice that told me my mission had to expand beyond the borders I once called home. Elon Musk. The night sky over Texas was painted in shades of indigo and silent fire. Elon Musk stood quietly outside the SpaceX launch facility, staring at the stars as if they were ancient friends whispering secrets of destiny. The cameras had been turned off, the engineers had gone home, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself a breath that was not laced with schedules, equations, or investor demands. What no one around him realized was that his mind had already crossed borders his body had not. He was thinking of something far greater than rockets or electric cars, he was thinking of leaving America itself. People would wonder, why would the man who reshaped Silicon Valley, electrified the automotive industry, and built launch pads into the heavens suddenly decide to walk away from the land that made him? That night, under the Texas stars, Elon knew that the answer was not something that could be explained in a press release. It was spiritual, almost cosmic. His journey began with questions that had followed him since childhood in Pretoria. Was humanity destined to chain itself to old structures of power? Was invention meant to be controlled by governments, corporations, and borders? Or was it meant to flow freely, like the energy of the universe itself? The more success he found in America, the louder those questions became. He could hear them echo in the silence of his nights. And then came the dreams. Elon began having vivid dreams where he was standing at the edge of deserts he had never seen, mountains he had never climbed, rivers that did not belong to America. He saw visions of people, faces unfamiliar but glowing with hope, waiting for something only he could bring. At first, he dismissed them as the byproduct of exhaustion. But night after night, the visions grew sharper, more insistent, until they felt less like dreams and more like instructions. And then came the voice. It was not the voice of a person. It was deep, resonant, like the vibration of the universe itself. Sometimes it spoke in silence, sometimes in words that struck his heart like thunder. It told him, "Your mission does not belong to one land. You are being called to carry the light to places where it has been hidden." This is what Elon Musk would never reveal on television interviews, the truth that his decision to leave America was not driven by politics, not by finance, not even by personal discontent. It was driven by something greater, something divine. He once confided to a close friend, "I think the angels are guiding me." I don't mean that as a metaphor. I mean it literally. That friend laughed nervously, thinking Elon was exaggerating. But Elon wasn't. For months, he had felt the presence of an unseen hand in his life. The hand that had pushed him out of South Africa when he was young, that had carried him across oceans to North America, that had propelled him through failures and breakthroughs, it was still there, still guiding, and now it was pushing him to leave again. But where? And why now? He began to notice signs. Books falling open to strange passages, strangers approaching him with words that pierced his heart, sudden whispers in moments of solitude. Archangel Michael's name came to him repeatedly, in ways he could not ignore. A child once handed him a paper star and said, "This is for you, Mr. Musk. The angel said you would know what it means." He had smiled politely, but inside, he trembled. That night in Texas, as he watched the sky, Elon finally admitted to himself that his path was no longer tied to America. America had been the forge where his mission was shaped, but it was not the destiny itself. He had to move, to carry his light to other lands where the spirit of innovation had been buried under centuries of fear and control. It was not about leaving America, it was about obeying God. His heart grew heavy when he thought of the consequences. Critics would accuse him of betrayal. The media would spin it as failure. Governments would panic at the thought of losing one of the greatest innovators of the century. But Elon had learned long ago that following truth meant enduring storms. He whispered into the night, "God, guide me. If this is truly you, send me the courage to take the step." And in that moment, he felt it. A warm light within his chest, a calmness that silenced all fear. He knew then, he was not alone. The decision was made. Elon Musk would leave America. But the world would not yet understand why. The wind moved softly across the plains that night, carrying with it a strange stillness, as though the earth itself was pausing to hear Elon Musk's decision. In the silence of that Texas night, he felt both smaller than he had ever felt before, and yet at the same time larger than life, as if the universe had wrapped him in its arms. He thought back to the earliest days of his arrival in America. The country had given him a canvas to paint wild dreams upon. From PayPal to Tesla to SpaceX, he had been embraced and rejected, celebrated and condemned, often at the same time. America had given him opportunity, but it had also tried to break him with criticism, lawsuits, and endless battles with forces that feared change. He had survived them all, but at what cost? Inside him was a restlessness that no success could calm. He realized that innovation could never be fully free in a land bound by invisible chains. The government regulated space as though it owned the stars, corporations tried to suffocate progress with their greed, and society had become addicted to comfort rather than courage. That was when he began to feel the pull of another place. Not just geographically, but spiritually. He could not describe it fully to others, but in his heart, he knew he was being summoned to step outside the land of his greatest victories to discover a land of his greatest calling. The decision began to show itself in little ways. Meetings at Tesla headquarters no longer carried the same fire they once did. Boardroom discussions felt like prisons of numbers rather than cathedrals of imagination. His own voice echoed in rooms where people no longer truly listened, but only waited for stock values to rise or fall. He thought, "This isn't why I came to America. This isn't why I came to Earth." His friends, his advisors, even his family thought his exhaustion was temporary. They said, "You just need a break. Stay here. Take time off, retreat into your mansions, rest in your wealth." But Elon knew wealth was never his goal. He had chased meaning, not money. And now, the meaning was pointing elsewhere. One evening, he received an invitation that seemed ordinary but carried with it a whisper of destiny. A group of scientists in South America wanted him to visit, to explore possibilities of new energy systems in remote villages. Normally, such requests were filtered, lost in piles of other demands. But something about this one caught his attention. The email arrived the same night he dreamed of standing at the foot of a mountain with a golden cross shining at its peak. He flew there quietly, without press coverage, without announcements. And when he arrived, what he saw shook him. Children studying under broken streetlights, mothers carrying buckets of water for miles, men working with tools older than their grandfathers. Yet in their eyes, there was a hunger for hope, a thirst for light. One boy tugged on his sleeve and said, "Are you the man who brings stars down from the sky?" Elon froze. How could a child he had never met speak the exact words that haunted his dreams? He knelt and asked, "Why do you say that?" The boy shrugged and answered simply, "Because I saw you in my dream. The angel told me you were coming." Elon's heart pounded. It was no longer coincidence. It was confirmation. From that moment, the path grew clearer. He realized that America had already been given his inventions, his companies, his breakthroughs. But the rest of the world, the forgotten lands, the overlooked people, they were waiting for him too. The voice within him, the whisper of God and the guiding hand of the angels, had been preparing him for this moment. Archangel Michael's presence became undeniable in his life. He would see flashes of blue light during his meditation, hear sudden words of encouragement in moments of doubt, feel a protective force when fear tried to overtake him. Once, during a turbulent flight, as the plane shook violently, he closed his eyes and whispered, "Michael, if you are with me, show me a sign." At that moment, the storm cleared, the sky opened, and the sun broke through the clouds. He knew it was no accident. Elon began to plan in silence. No one was to know. He started restructuring his businesses, positioning trusted leaders, ensuring that even if he left, the machinery of Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink would continue. He did not want to abandon what he had built, he wanted to expand it beyond the borders of America. But he also knew the world would misinterpret him. They would call him ungrateful, accuse him of betrayal, speculate about secret deals, or worse, imagine conspiracies. That did not matter anymore. What mattered was obedience to the higher call. He often told himself, when you serve God's vision, you stop serving the world's opinion. The night before he publicly hinted at leaving America, he stood once more under the stars. This time, he felt no doubt, no fear, only a calm resolve. He whispered, "I will go where you send me." The silence around him seemed to reply, not in words, but in presence. And so, Elon Musk's journey into the unknown began. The announcement came slowly, almost like a whisper that turned into a storm. Elon Musk did not call a press conference, he did not blast it across social media at first, nor did he sit with news anchors for a primetime interview. Instead, his message slipped into the world like a ripple in a pond. A comment here, a suggestion there, a few carefully chosen words that hinted at something larger. At first, people thought it was a joke. Elon Musk leaving America? Impossible, they laughed. America was his kingdom, his empire, the land that made his dreams real. Without him, many thought, Silicon Valley would lose its brightest spark, and Wall Street would tremble. How could the man who had tethered his rockets to Cape Canaveral and stretched his factories across Nevada and Texas even consider leaving? But those who truly paid attention knew Elon never joked about destiny. When he spoke of leaving, there was no smirk, no playful tone. There was only a steady seriousness, the kind that comes from a man listening to a higher call. The world's reaction was immediate. Media outlets scrambled for explanations. Some speculated it was about taxes. Others whispered it was political. Some accused him of being ungrateful, a billionaire running away from responsibility. Yet none of them understood the truth, that his decision had been born not in the chaos of economics or politics, but in the stillness of a conversation with God. Elon sat in his study late one evening, surrounded not by technology, but by silence. On his desk lay a simple notebook filled with sketches and scattered words. Among the equations and designs, one phrase appeared again and again, scribbled in different corners of the pages: "The light must go where it is needed most." He stared at those words and remembered the boy in South America who had told him the angel said he was coming. That child's voice echoed in his mind with such purity that Elon could not dismiss it. He thought of all the places where electricity was still a privilege, where clean water was scarce, where technology had not yet broken chains of poverty. He thought of voices never heard, of dreams never born, and he knew, his mission could not remain tied to one nation. That night, as he wrestled with the weight of his decision, he felt the room shift. The air grew heavy yet calm, like the pause before dawn. He closed his eyes, and in that silence, he felt it again, the presence of Archangel Michael. The archangel did not appear in form but in force. A radiant strength filled the room, and Elon felt as though he were standing at the edge of eternity. Then, deep in his heart, he heard the words, "Do not fear their misunderstanding. Follow the path of light. Where you go, the shield of heaven will go with you." Elon opened his eyes, tears blurring his vision. He whispered, "I will obey." From that moment, there was no turning back. He began quietly selling off properties in America. The mansions, the estates, places that once symbolized success now felt like anchors chaining him to a land he had outgrown. Friends were bewildered. "Why would you give all this up?" they asked. Elon smiled gently but gave no answer, for how could he explain that God had asked for his obedience, not his comfort? The media, catching wind of these moves, began their frenzy. Headlines screamed of Elon's exit strategy, the billionaire's betrayal, Musk's mysterious migration. Yet Elon remained silent, neither confirming nor denying, choosing instead to walk in the quiet assurance of his calling. His children asked questions too. "Dad, are we really leaving? But all our friends are here." Elon knelt beside them, placing a hand on their shoulders. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the greatest journeys begin when we step into places we don't know. Remember, we are not just living for ourselves. We are part of a much bigger story." Behind closed doors, the pressure mounted. Advisors begged him to reconsider. Investors panicked at the thought of losing the figurehead that kept billions in motion. Politicians called, offering promises, making threats. Yet through it all, Elon remained unmoved. What they did not know was that his heart was already gone. His feet still walked the soil of America, but his spirit was already traveling rivers, deserts, mountains, guided by whispers of destiny. Then came the night of the vision. He dreamed he was standing on a vast plain beneath a sky filled with stars brighter than any he had ever seen. A golden path stretched before him, leading not upward, but outward, toward distant lands he could not yet recognize. And at the end of that path stood a figure of light, wings outstretched, holding a sword that blazed like the sun. The figure spoke, "Elon, you were not given fire to warm only one house. You were given fire to ignite nations. Go where the Spirit leads, and fear not the storms, for I will stand beside you." He woke with his heart racing, his body trembling. It was not a dream. It was a directive. From that day forward, Elon Musk no longer asked if he would leave America. He only asked when. The morning of his departure arrived quietly, without fanfare or cameras. Elon Musk moved like a shadow through the halls of his sprawling Tesla factory, a man fully aware that his absence would ripple across the world. Employees whispered as he passed, sensing a change in the air, though none could grasp its magnitude. Even the most loyal aides felt a tremor of uncertainty as they followed his subtle instructions, preparing for a journey that was more spiritual than logistical. He began with the essentials, but even these were approached differently than any previous venture. He did not pack for luxury or comfort. Instead, he collected tools of creation, notebooks filled with ideas for energy systems, sketches of new transportation technologies, and devices capable of harnessing solar and kinetic power in ways the world had yet to see. Every item carried a purpose, every possession a mission. Before leaving, he visited SpaceX one last time. The launch pad stretched before him, silent and waiting, rockets pointing skyward as though sensing the gravity of his decision. Engineers tried to maintain normalcy, but their eyes betrayed worry. Elon walked among them slowly, stopping to observe the youngest engineers, the ones whose eyes still burned with curiosity rather than exhaustion. He knelt beside a young woman soldering circuits on a satellite prototype and said softly, "Remember, the sky is not the limit. The limit is only in the mind that stops dreaming." She looked up, startled, then smiled, sensing the depth of meaning behind his words. Next came Tesla's Fremont factory. Rows of electric cars gleamed under bright lights, the hum of machinery like a heartbeat of progress. Elon walked the aisles, touching the hoods of vehicles as though saying farewell to old friends. A small group of employees gathered near the main office, hoping for a word of explanation. He looked at them and spoke simply, "I am not abandoning you. I am simply stepping into a place where the world needs light that has not yet reached it. Protect the work we have started. Carry it forward. You are part of something much larger than yourselves, something that will outlive us all." Then came the most personal farewells, his family. Elon sat with his children in the quiet of his home. He explained the decision not with fear, but with inspiration. He spoke of following God's guidance, of listening to the call that demanded courage, and of serving humanity in ways that no single nation could contain. Tears were shed, embraces lingered, and promises were made. He promised them that this journey was not an escape, but an expansion, a way to take the knowledge, resources, and inspiration born in America to other lands that needed it most. Even as he packed the final items, a sense of anticipation coursed through him. Elon felt the presence of Archangel Michael as vividly as if the angel stood beside him. He could feel the energy of protection, of divine purpose, guiding his every step. Every fear that tried to surface was met with calm assurance. The journey itself was understated, almost secretive. Elon did not travel in limousines or private jets alone. He chose a small, quiet flight, bypassing media scrutiny and public spectacle. Along the way, he contemplated the lands he had yet to touch, the villages without electricity, the schools without books, the communities trapped by poverty yet filled with untapped potential. In his heart, he felt a growing urgency. The mission was not about power or wealth, but about lighting the unseen corners of the world. He thought of the boy in South America, of the visions under Texas skies, and he knew that every mile brought him closer to destiny. Finally, he arrived in the new land, a place untouched by the clamor of technology yet rich with the heartbeat of humanity. The first sight was a village that seemed ordinary to the casual observer, but to Elon, it radiated possibility. Children ran barefoot across dusty streets, women carried baskets with a pride that had endured centuries, and men labored under the sun with eyes that held dreams as wide as the horizon. He stepped off the plane, feeling the earth beneath his feet, and whispered a prayer, "Guide me, God. Let me be worthy of this mission." As he walked among the people, they looked at him with curiosity. To them, he was a stranger, a man who carried unknown power. But Elon did not flaunt his fame. Instead, he began to teach, to build, and to listen. He shared technology in a way that could be adopted without dependence, energy systems that could be sustained locally, and tools that could empower communities without domination. Over the days and weeks, the villagers began to see the man behind the legend. Elon did not ask for recognition. He only asked for engagement, for minds and hands willing to shape the future together. Slowly, the whispers spread. People called him the man who brought light, not just electricity, but hope, knowledge, and vision. Through it all, Elon felt the continued presence of Archangel Michael. The angel's guidance was subtle yet unmistakable, nudging him toward decisions that maximized impact, warning him of obstacles that could derail progress, and offering quiet reassurance in moments of doubt. It became clear to Elon that leaving America was not a departure from his past, but an evolution of his purpose. America had been the crucible where he learned to create, but the world beyond its borders was the canvas where creation had no limits. With every village illuminated, every community empowered, Elon Musk realized that his mission had only just begun. The journey would be long, filled with challenges that no human foresight could fully anticipate, yet every step was guided by a force greater than himself. And as he looked at the horizon, he felt the unshakable certainty that the path chosen, the path of obedience, courage, and vision, was the one that would change the world. Elon Musk's first months in the new land were a blend of exhilaration and challenge. The villagers welcomed him cautiously at first, unsure of who this stranger was and what he intended. To them, America was a distant, almost mythical place, full of stories of wealth, innovation, and sometimes corruption. And yet, here was Elon, a man who carried the reputation of unimaginable achievement, humbly kneeling beside them to learn their routines, to understand their needs. He began small, establishing simple solar grids that illuminated homes and schools. The children, who had never known light at night, gasped with delight as their surroundings transformed. Mothers cooked with more ease, fathers could work safely after dusk, and the village itself seemed to awaken as though touched by a magic that was at once practical and divine. But Elon did not stop there. Guided by visions that still came to him at night, he began designing systems that could provide clean water, sustainable energy, and access to knowledge without depending on foreign powers or unstable governments. He met with local leaders, sharing not just technology, but a philosophy: progress must be inclusive, ethical, and inspired by something greater than greed. As the work advanced, news of his presence spread beyond the village. Media outlets eventually discovered his location and descended in droves, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward, desperate for a story. Elon, however, remained composed. He gave only what he needed to: a few words about innovation, sustainability, and the importance of empowering communities. He refused to make this about himself, insisting instead that the focus remain on the people and the mission. Not everyone was pleased. Governments in America and abroad began to feel uneasy. Here was a man who had the world's attention, now working quietly to distribute technology and knowledge beyond their control. Analysts speculated on hidden agendas, and politicians whispered about potential threats to national interests. Corporations that once profited from dependence now feared independence. Yet Elon continued, guided by a calm inner certainty that only he understood. One night, while walking through a field lit by his newly installed solar lamps, Elon paused and looked at the stars. The sky seemed more vivid here than anywhere else, unpolluted by city lights, as if the universe itself were applauding his decision. He thought of the life he had left behind: the factories, the cities, the boardrooms filled with endless debate. They were important, yes, but they were only stepping stones to this moment, this work, this calling. In those quiet hours, Elon felt the presence of Archangel Michael more strongly than ever. The angel's guidance was no longer just a whisper or a fleeting vision. It became a companion, a protector, and a counselor. In moments of doubt, when resources ran low, when natural disasters struck, or when resistance from authorities threatened to halt progress, he felt a surge of strength that seemed to come from beyond human understanding. It was during one such storm, a violent tempest that swept through the region, that Elon realized the depth of his mission. The winds tore through newly constructed homes, and the villagers looked to him for guidance. Without hesitation, he organized teams to secure structures, provide emergency resources, and rebuild critical systems. By the time the sun rose, the village was standing, stronger than before. And in that moment, Elon understood that his work was not only technological, it was spiritual. He was building resilience, hope, and faith in places that had known little of either. Word of his efforts reached global leaders. Some sought dialogue, wanting to study his methods, perhaps even replicate them. Others saw him as a threat, a disruptor to the established order. Elon welcomed collaboration but never compromise. He made it clear that his allegiance was not to any nation, corporation, or political system, it was to the higher purpose that had guided him to this land. Yet challenges continued. Resources were scarce, skepticism ran deep, and old habits proved difficult to change. There were nights when Elon questioned whether the vision was too ambitious, whether the weight of expectation might crush him. And each time, he returned to prayer, to meditation, to the quiet presence of Archangel Michael. Each time, he was reminded, courage is not the absence of fear, but the persistence in spite of it. Slowly, the village transformed. Children studied under bright lamps, women managed cooperative businesses, men applied new agricultural techniques that yielded more than they had ever imagined. Neighboring villages began to take notice, sending representatives to learn from Elon's work. What began as a single spark of light grew into a network of hope, expanding across the region. Elon knew this was just the beginning. The world beyond still required innovation, justice, and guidance. And though he had left America, he carried its lessons with him: the ability to dream audaciously, to organize complex systems, to inspire those around him. Yet now, these lessons were applied not for wealth, fame, or influence, but for purpose. One evening, as he watched the children gather under newly constructed study lamps, Elon reflected on the journey. He thought of the dreams that had first called him here, of the boy who had seen him in visions, of the quiet urgings of God and the protective hand of Michael. And in that moment, he knew that leaving America had not been an abandonment, it had been an awakening. The mission ahead was vast, the path uncertain, but Elon Musk had learned a profound truth: when one follows the higher calling, the world conspires to support the journey. And as he looked to the horizon, a faint golden light appeared, like a promise of more to come. As months turned into a year, Elon Musk's presence in the new land began to reshape more than just the village. Neighboring towns noticed the transformation: schools with electricity, clean water flowing where none had existed, and communities beginning to thrive with newfound independence. Word spread, and soon, international organizations, governments, and corporations all turned their eyes toward this quiet revolution. Some came with curiosity and admiration. Others came with suspicion, fearing the implications of a man who could implement advanced technologies without allegiance to their systems of control. Elon received messages, some polite, some threatening, warning him to halt his activities. Yet he remained unshaken, guided by a certainty deeper than fear. One morning, as he walked through a field where children had constructed small solar-powered models of cars and rockets, he felt the familiar presence of Archangel Michael. This time, the angel's presence was stronger, almost palpable, as though the heavenly force had stepped closer to watch over the unfolding mission. Elon paused and whispered, "I need guidance. Show me how to scale this, how to protect what we are building." And in the quiet of his heart, the answer came, not as words, but as a vision. He saw networks of villages connected through clean energy grids, schools powered by sustainable systems, and marketplaces thriving without dependency on distant powers. He saw communities no longer struggling to survive, but beginning to innovate, to create, to dream. Elon knew what had to be done next. He began designing a blueprint for regional transformation. Not just one village, not just one valley, but entire regions connected by sustainable infrastructure, technology, and knowledge. He called on engineers he had trusted in America, inviting them to join him in this new land. They arrived cautiously, unsure what to expect, but inspired by Elon's vision and the sense of purpose that seemed to infuse every action. Resistance, however, was inevitable. Corporations whose profits relied on dependency saw Elon as a threat. Governments who feared autonomous communities feared his influence. He received veiled threats, pressure to return to America, and warnings that his work could destabilize local economies. Yet Elon faced these challenges with calm resolve. Each obstacle was met with practical solutions, careful diplomacy, and unwavering commitment to the higher mission. One afternoon, a delegation arrived from a neighboring country, officially invited under the guise of cooperation, but secretly tasked with investigating and controlling Elon's work. The delegation expected to find a man imposing foreign ideas, a wealthy outsider dictating change. Instead, they found communities thriving, self-sufficient, empowered to sustain themselves. Elon spoke to them not with arrogance, but with clarity and humility. He shared knowledge, methods, and systems, emphasizing that the goal was not dependence, but independence. By the time the delegation departed, their skepticism had transformed into cautious respect. They realized that Elon Musk was not building a personal empire, he was fulfilling a mission that transcended borders, politics, and personal gain. At night, Elon often reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought of America, the country he had left behind, and the lessons it had taught him: innovation, resilience, and the power of vision. But he also understood why he had been called to leave, to take what he had learned and share it in places where it mattered most. It was during one of these reflective nights that Elon had a vision unlike any before. He saw the Earth from space, a glowing orb of possibility. Lines of light connected communities, energy flowing freely, knowledge spreading like rivers across continents. He understood then that his mission was no longer confined to a single nation or continent, it was global. And yet, the vision also carried warning. Dark clouds of resistance lingered, representing human fear, greed, and inertia. But even these did not frighten him. He understood that light could not exist without shadow, and that the true measure of purpose was persistence in the face of opposition. Elon redoubled his efforts. He built schools, hospitals, energy systems, and innovation centers. He trained local leaders, ensuring that the work could continue independently of his presence. And every step of the way, he felt Archangel Michael guiding him, warning him, and offering reassurance when obstacles seemed insurmountable. News of his work began to reach the world stage. Documentaries, interviews, and reports highlighted the transformation. People marveled at what one man could achieve, but few understood the spiritual foundation behind it, the faith, the guidance, and the obedience that had led him to leave America and dedicate himself to the greater mission. Despite recognition, Elon remained humble. He did not seek accolades. His focus was on the mission, on the communities, on the people whose lives were changing. And he knew that the journey was far from over. There were millions more in need, places still untouched by innovation, still waiting for light. It was during this time that he received a letter from a child he had met months earlier, a boy who had once said he saw Elon in a dream. The letter read, "You are the light you promised. Keep going. We are ready." Elon held the paper close, feeling a wave of emotion. The mission was not only possible, it was necessary. And so, Elon Musk pressed onward, leaving behind the familiar, embracing the unknown, guided not by fame or fortune, but by purpose, faith, and the unwavering presence of Archangel Michael. He knew the world would continue to speculate, to question, to challenge. But he had learned the truth: when called by something greater, obedience is the only path that leads to fulfillment. And as the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky with colors no artist could capture, Elon whispered quietly, "This is only the beginning." The world began to notice not just Elon Musk's absence from America, but the undeniable impact he was having elsewhere. Initially, it was subtle, whispers in corporate boardrooms, cautious mentions on news channels, and speculative headlines about a mysterious innovator transforming communities abroad. But soon, the evidence was impossible to ignore. Villages that had once struggled with darkness and scarcity now thrived with energy, education, and opportunity. Entire regions were beginning to feel the ripple effects of Elon's vision. Governments grew uneasy. They had long relied on predictable systems of control, economies dependent on resources, nations bound by technology monopolies, and populations guided by old hierarchies. Elon's work disrupted all of it. He did not simply bring technology, he brought autonomy. He did not simply invest, he taught people to build, to innovate, to sustain themselves. International pressure mounted. Representatives arrived under the guise of diplomacy, but with veiled threats and demands. Some corporations tried to lobby local leaders, offering bribes or promises to regain influence. Others used propaganda to cast doubt on Elon's intentions. Yet, through every attempt at interference, Elon remained calm, anchored in the guidance he felt from Archangel Michael. One evening, during a particularly tense meeting with a delegation sent to assess his work, Elon spoke plainly: "You can try to control people with money, fear, or politics. But you cannot control what has already been awakened, the desire to create, to innovate, to dream. That power belongs to the people, and it is not yours to take." The room fell silent. Even the most skeptical officials felt the weight of truth in his words. They had expected negotiation or compromise, they did not expect conviction rooted in purpose and something greater than human ambition. Elon's days became a delicate balance of building, teaching, and navigating the increasing scrutiny. He traveled to neighboring regions, implementing energy systems, establishing schools, and training local leaders. His teams worked tirelessly, inspired by his dedication and the clarity of his vision. Everywhere he went, he emphasized one lesson: empowerment must be sustainable, ethical, and shared. Technology should lift people up, not chain them to dependence. Despite the successes, challenges were relentless. Natural disasters struck, threatening infrastructure. Resistance from powerful interests intensified, ranging from bureaucratic obstruction to direct sabotage. In the midst of it all, Elon turned to prayer and reflection, seeking guidance and strength. Archangel Michael's presence, always subtle, became more profound during these moments of crisis, guiding decisions and providing reassurance. One night, after a long day of rebuilding following a severe storm, Elon stood alone on a hill overlooking a transformed valley. The villages below glowed with lights powered by solar grids, children played in streets now safe and illuminated, and families thrived where despair had once been. He felt a presence beside him and closed his eyes, sensing the comforting strength of Archangel Michael. In that silence, he understood something vital: his mission was not simply about technology or wealth, it was about faith, resilience, and the courage to follow a higher purpose, even when misunderstood by the world. Elon realized that leaving America had been the catalyst. America had given him opportunity, but it had also imposed limits. By stepping away, he had entered a space where innovation and obedience to God could exist without compromise. Every challenge he faced, every obstacle overcome, reinforced the truth he had always known: courage is measured not by success alone, but by persistence in the face of opposition. Over time, networks of villages began to connect, forming self-sufficient communities powered by renewable energy, education, and local leadership. These hubs became beacons of hope and models for sustainable development. People who had once felt invisible now saw themselves as creators, problem solvers, and innovators. Elon watched as children, inspired by the possibilities, began designing their own experiments, small machines, and new ways of thinking. Despite global scrutiny, Elon remained focused. He did not seek recognition, fame, or wealth. His life had become a continuous act of service, guided by faith and purpose. And yet, the world began to take notice. Media outlets cautiously reported on the changes, while governments and corporations tried to understand the phenomenon. Analysts debated whether it was philanthropy, strategic innovation, or something else entirely, but Elon did not answer. He simply continued building, teaching, and inspiring. One morning, as he oversaw the completion of a solar-powered school in a remote village, Elon felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The children ran toward the doors with laughter, curiosity, and excitement. For the first time, he realized that leaving America had not been a loss, it had been a step into a mission far greater than he had imagined. He knelt for a moment in silent prayer, feeling Archangel Michael's presence beside him more clearly than ever. The angel's guidance had brought him to this point, through trials, doubts, and resistance. And now, Elon understood the final truth: leaving America had been the first step in lighting the world, one village, one community, one life at a time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, Elon whispered quietly, both to God and to the angel guiding him, "This journey is not mine alone, it belongs to all who are ready to rise." And in that moment, he knew the mission would continue, unstoppable, guided by faith, purpose, and the unseen hands of the divine. After that first year, Elon Musk's mission took on an almost legendary quality in the regions he served. What had begun as a single village transformed into interconnected communities stretching across valleys, mountains, and rivers. Electricity, education, and clean water were only the first steps. Elon knew that true transformation required more than infrastructure. It demanded a shift in mindset, a culture of innovation, collaboration, and faith. He spent countless hours with local leaders, teaching them not only how to maintain technology but how to expand it, to solve problems independently, and to pass knowledge to the next generation. He emphasized ethics, sustainability, and vision, ensuring that the communities would not become dependent on him, or on outside powers, but would thrive on their own ingenuity. Despite progress, opposition grew. Some governments began to see Elon's work as a threat to their influence. Lobbyists and corporate interests spread disinformation, suggesting hidden motives, foreign agendas, or exploitation. They could not comprehend that his purpose was not wealth or control, but service and faith. One night, as he reviewed blueprints for a sustainable energy grid connecting 3 new villages, he felt a familiar, calm presence. Archangel Michael's guidance had become increasingly direct, not a whisper, but a force of clarity in Elon's mind. The angel seemed to speak not through words but through understanding: each choice, each step, each innovation had ripple effects, and the work must remain true to the higher purpose. Elon reflected on the lessons from America, the successes and failures, and realized they were all training for this moment. America had taught him ambition, perseverance, and the power of vision. This new mission demanded wisdom, patience, and faith. He had left the land of opportunity to bring opportunity to lands that had never known it, guided by a higher calling that transcended borders. As the network of communities grew, Elon faced new challenges: natural disasters, logistical obstacles, and political resistance. Yet, with every setback, he learned and adapted. When floods destroyed crops, he designed irrigation systems that could resist future storms. When fuel shortages threatened energy production, he created hybrid solar kinetic solutions that could function independently. When misinformation spread, he invited communities to observe, learn, and verify, fostering trust through transparency. One evening, standing atop a hill overlooking a valley lit by solar lamps and humming with life, Elon spoke to a group of children gathered around him. "You are the future," he said. "Not because of what I bring, but because of what you choose to create. Remember, light is not just electricity. It is knowledge, courage, and faith. Wherever you take it, you change the world." The children's eyes shone, reflecting the lights of the village below, but also something deeper, a spark that Elon knew could never be extinguished. As months passed, global attention could no longer be ignored. International media began to cover his efforts more widely, not as isolated experiments but as a growing movement. Governments, corporations, and institutions analyzed his methods, seeking to understand the phenomenon. Analysts debated whether it was philanthropy, innovation, or something larger. Yet Elon did not seek recognition, he remained focused on the work itself. The mission was expanding. Schools, hospitals, and energy systems were now being connected by information networks that allowed knowledge to flow freely. Communities began innovating independently, creating solutions for local problems using the tools and principles Elon had provided. The ripple effect was undeniable. What had begun as one man's decision to leave America had become a catalyst for global transformation. Amid the growing recognition, Elon remained grounded in faith. Each evening, he walked under the stars, reflecting on the path that had brought him here. Archangel Michael's presence remained constant, a reminder that this journey was not his alone. Every obstacle, every success, every challenge was part of a plan larger than personal ambition. In one moment of reflection, Elon realized the full impact of his decision. Leaving America had not been an act of abandonment, but of obedience. It had freed him from limits, allowed him to serve without compromise, and enabled him to bring light where it had never reached before. He whispered quietly into the night sky, "Thank you, God, for guiding me. Thank you for showing me that service, faith, and courage are the true measures of success." And as the villages below glowed with life, children laughed, and communities thrived, Elon Musk understood that his journey was far from over. There were still millions waiting for light, for opportunity, for hope. Yet, with faith, guidance, and relentless determination, he knew the mission would continue, unstoppable, reshaping the world one community at a time.